Dive roll is one of the sketchiest rolls to learn in acrobatics, and that's without having anything below you to dive over. Once you factor in that, I'm going to give my tips and progressions to help bring that sketch factor down. All this with the help of the Tap Brothers. Let's go!
First things first is we're not going to be performing a typical gymnastics dive roll, so you're not going to be going over the spine here. So we're not doing this. We're doing a shoulder roll here. So we're going diagonally across from our shoulder to our hip here. So what this does is allow us to roll on harder surfaces like concrete without going over our spine and causing any damage. So in parkour, that's what we're going to be doing, is performing the shoulder roll. So I'll show you real quick what it looks like. Going over the shoulder. And a prerequisite for your dive roll is learning your parkour roll. So if you don't have your parkour roll down, you can't do your parkour roll nice and smooth. Get that down first before learning your dive roll, because the dive roll is just basically that technique, but adding more jump, more difficulty, and performing the dive motion. Step number one is the run up and the jump. So with your dive roll, a lot of people like to punch into it. That's okay for softer surfaces or in certain situations, but we really want to master the gather step.
So coming from acrobatics, I can attest to the repeating the basics, having a good warm-up at the start before attempting any skill. A dynamic warm-up. I'm not opposed to winging it and trying things out. What I am opposed to, with a minor exception, more on that later, is treating your body like a practice dummy and throwing it out the window with little to no care in the world for this new skill that you're about to do. If you want reference on how you can start out, check out my video over here. Warm up your hands, your wrists, hands, wrists. You'll thank me later.
A lot of people like to punch into it. That's okay for softer surfaces or in certain situations, but we really want to master the gather step. And that's going to allow us to go into the dive roll without as much impact on our ankles. So the gather step looks more like this, goes 1 and 2, okay? This will, again, make it to where we don't put as much impact on our joints. And for harder surfaces in parkour, this is very important.
When I was on the team of acrobatics at my old school, the punch was used as a warm-up, but also in the actual skill. Though it's not notable at first, I do, once I come up, do a little bit of a spring two-footer, and that's a little bit of a punch, action-like. Both are good techniques to have in your back pocket.
Next step is with the arms. Just like if you watched our front flip tutorial, you're going to be having the arms up here and throwing into a hollow position, okay? This is what's going to direct the jump and go into the dive here. So key thing to think about here, and a lot of people mess up on this, is you want to hit this hollow position, okay? You want your body to be nice and rigid. You want your core to be tight. You want your butt to be tight when you go into this, okay? Because this is what's going to allow you to have that nice, good dive, nice controlled dive, and allow you to go into the roll afterwards very nicely, okay? So we've thrown the arms, we've hit that hollow position, then we're going to perform the heel drive. That's step 3. Drive our heels up, so our legs are going to be close and tight together. Our heels are going to drive up to allow our body to go into this angle here.
So what he was saying about that hollow, or a hollow curve, that parabola, yes, that more or less of that parabola. You want to have everything tight as possible. That nice in between of having everything tight, that nothing is flopping around, but also loose enough that when you're going up in the air, you're not tensing The minute you tense, that's when things get blocky, and then the fear factor goes up because your body's just like, oh my gosh, why am I up here? I'm gonna freak out. And injuries happen. Everybody loves injuries.
And then that's when we move on to step 4, and that is absorbing with the hands. So there's different things we can do with our hands here. You can go into a diamond position here. So from here, you can absorb, and since we're going to the shoulder roll, the arms are gonna be slightly to the side or to the shoulder that you like to roll towards, okay? Going here. All right, so that's one. You can go with the diamond. Another one people use is the hand in a fist here. So this one is in a fist, so that way they can go into that shoulder very efficiently. And then another one I've seen is where people will pretty much have just their hand in a blade and go through like this. Me personally, I have the one hand flat, one hand in a blade here, so I can go nice and smooth into that roll. Because really, we want to have this arm as smooth as possible, so that way we can go into it nice and controlled.
Diamond, straight, winging it. Which is better? Are they both worse? Should I not even attempt it? It depends on your body shape and what you're comfortable with. As you see in this video of me attempting the dive roll, my hands are straight by my ears and more in that gymnastic style type of roll. At the time, that was what I was comfortable with because that's what my coaches were looking for. Nice curve, straight, almost like I'm diving into a pool with my toes, and then smoothly as possible, getting right up. Over the past few months, I've actually attempted doing more of that shoulder base, and I found that it's more natural. My body tends to want to round more on my right side, my dominant side, with more fluidity as opposed to my left, which I'm doing my best to train for. Here is where the exception of what I mentioned earlier comes in. Here, winging it is not entirely bad because you're finding what works for your body. For me, as a tall guy, I found that when I was on a softer surface, I had more comfortability diving into the pool, per se. Diving with my hands and arms by my ears and jumping in that pool more smoothly, and then completing it with standing up. Core was tight, and that my toes, when going into that jump, were pointed. In acrobatics, apparently, if you have your feet like this, those are ugly. This, nice and pretty. Now that I've been training more on my own, I found that for what works for me is really just messing around a little bit with my shoulder. If I'm leaning more towards my left shoulder, then I found that I tend to do more of this saber X type of shape in order to get over. Whereas other times I find that I do more of a diamond shape to roll over. Same with my other side. And that just comes with experimenting and again, knowing your body and seeing how it moves through space. Your case might be different. See what works for you.
Very important that the first point of contact with your shoulders is the meaty part of your shoulder here, so the upper back. It's very important we hit here, and we can do this by making sure to tuck in our chin and look underneath our armpit here, okay? That's gonna allow us to easily place onto the meaty part of our shoulder here. Then from here, we're still holding that hollow position throughout this whole entire time. And then once we start to roll onto the shoulder here, that's when we tuck our legs toward our body, so that way we round our back and we're able to land back on our feet nice and smooth. Because a lot of people make the mistake of not performing a nice tuck or rounding their back there, and what it does is they slam onto the ground like that, or they open up too early. So you want to make sure to tuck the legs in, so that way you can easily pop back up, nice, smooth, and controlled roll.
Whoever's watching this video, you don't know how many times when attempting this gracious skill of a roll, I've bumped my head. I've landed straight, not gracefully. Yeah, that's more like it. On my back, to which I could not move because the air had left me oh so graciously, eloquently, almost like something out of Shakespeare. It was not fun. Maybe it works for WWE and selling a certain type of move, but in acrobatics, gymnastics, parkour, any sport that involves rolling, that can mess you up real quick.
Progress into our dive rolls, because at first it might be a little tricky just to go for it. So what we can do is start off with the parkour roll, nice and low. Once we have that comfortable, all we have to do is start adding more height or more distance with our dive, or start diving into that parkour roll and slowly ramp it up, adding more speed, adding more height. So what you can do is, even starting from a low position, dive out just a little bit. Try to get the hands a little bit further out. Really stretch that body out and focus on getting into that hollow position and going over that technique that we talked about. And then we just progressively ramp it up even more and more and more. A lot of people email me and they have trouble with, at the end of their dive roll, as they're absorbing, their body just collapses, or it doesn't feel smooth. They hit really hard. So for example, they do their dive roll and it's just clunky here. They just don't feel really smooth. And a lot of this is due to a few things: core strength, technique, and we can improve on this by just performing candlesticks. So you're going up, you're swinging back in that hollow position here, and work on holding that hollow position and rolling up into a standing position. So here, and work on that motion right here, going from the hollow position into the tuck, and then safely stepping out.
So I agree 100%. If you have to, while in doing warm-ups, get that motion of rolling back and forward, almost looking like an armadillo, rolling back and trying to reach for its toes, that type of motion, in order to gain that little bit of that curvature, that stiffness, that tightness of the core that is required, do so. It will benefit you greatly and have a good carryover in all the rest of the rolls that you do. Your back and your brain will thank you for it. It's so boring. I want to do awesome cool stuff that I see in the movies and other stunt workers do. Well, have fun with your broken neck. It's these fundamentals that when executed to boredom, that lead to the confidence for higher and better skills. You stick with it and do that low, mid, eventually high, then you can eventually get to that high.
Here's a progression that I slipped my mind to include in the main video. If you want more detailed explanation, check out
the Savage Ronnie Chavez. He's pretty cool with all the stunts work and everything. He has a pretty good video on dive rolls. If you haven't already, check out this video that I have on quiet time.
like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell.
And I'll see you in the next video.